My story began before I was born in a doctor's office in northeastern Ohio where a female doctor wrote 2 words on a piece of paper, gastroschisis and omphalocele. In an essay, my mother, Mary Jo Fonner, wrote about her experience and described the scene. Mom, a conservative Mennonite woman who was then 32, was 20 weeks pregnant and had requested an ultrasound. The doctor, Dr. Chitrabhanu, explained that gastroschisis was a protrusion of the intestines through a hole in the abdomen, and that an omphalocele was when virtually all the abdominal organs, especially the liver, protrude out of the abdomen but are contained in a balloon-like membrane. Omphaloceles occur in 1 in 10,000 pregnancies, the doctor said. A week after that first conversation, my parents sat down in front of another doctor, my mom wrote. This man showed them pictures of dead babies with my condition from a medical textbook and asked my mom if she would consider having an abortion. He told my parents that 50% of O babies have serious heart defects and other problems and die. My mother told the doctor that she didn't want to have an abortion for religious reasons, but the doctor brought it up again during the next visit. My mother went ahead and took a test to determine whether I was chromosomally normal, and I was. She went on to change doctors, switching to Dr. Justin Lavin, the head of the OB/GYN unit at Akron Children's Hospital. Dr. Lavin gave me a 70% chance of survival, but my doctor after birth would be Dr. David Andrews, a pediatric surgeon who had just moved from Washington State and who had experience treating omphaloceles. His treatment method involved, quote, letting nature take its course, end quote. He would wrap an ace bandage around my midsection to force my organs to move back into my abdomen. New skin would grow around the hole, and it would eventually close itself. I was born via C-section on September 17, 1991, and was rushed to the NICU. Just over a month later, I went home. 4 months later, my mother wrote, in January 1992, I went back to the hospital, this time to the pediatric ICU where I was put on life support. My internal organs were back inside my body, but I was struggling to breathe. I had pneumonia, and a nurse had to manually ventilate my lungs while I lay in a drug-induced coma. My mother sat by my bedside and wound up a music box, playing Frere Jacques over and over again, while talking to me in hopes that somehow I would hear. My dad, John Fonner, was drifting in and out. He couldn't sit still, my mom wrote. It was the middle of the night, but people from my parents' Mennonite church were awake and praying. Still, the level of oxygen in my blood dipped from 80% to 50%. But somehow, throughout the night, I rallied. Over a week later, I came off the ventilator, and January 31st, I went home. I was later featured on television as one of Akron Children's Hospital's miracle children. My parents have told me some version of the story every year of my life on my birthday. As a child, adults at church would tell me that I was a miracle, and that God had saved me because I had a special purpose in life. I was like the girl who lived, but without a lightning bolt scar, and as I matured, I felt that I should not take my life for granted. I became preoccupied with the fact that every minute of my life was time that I wouldn't get back, and I felt driven to somehow make a difference in the world. I was weird. And thankfully, I grew out of most of this self-centered existential angst. As a child, I was also talkative, wildly creative, and defiant to a fault. My moods were unpredictable, and I had behavioral problems that baffled psychologists. But I was alive, and with age came maturity. Jumping forward, on July 12, 2014, I married my husband, Jesse Donovan. In May 2015, I graduated from Brevard College, a small liberal arts college in western North Carolina, with a degree in English, and am now working as a newspaper journalist at a small-town newspaper, also in North Carolina. As a crime and courts reporter, I get to tell stories of people in the community who've experienced unusual and even traumatic situations. I've interviewed teenagers with cancer and the parents of a 26-year-old killed in a car accident. I have interviewed a man who was present when his son, a mechanic, was crushed by a truck. I've spoken with an accused killer who was jailed for 6 years before being acquitted, and I've interviewed the family of those who were murdered, who may never have closure. I write stories like these because I have believed from an early age in the significance of every life, a perspective that is strongly rooted in my early history. When someone is taken from this world prematurely, I try to write an article that honors who they were to their friends and family and acknowledges their role in the community. When I cover tragedies, I mourn with those who mourn and do my best to convey the impact that that event, whatever it was, has had on our small town. I can't change the circumstances of those that I write about, but I do my best to represent them with respect and empathy and to truthfully relate their experience. My health now is excellent. I am only 5 feet tall and around 100 pounds, and I often get mistaken for a teenager. But at 25 years old, I am active and able to handle long hours on the job. I feel blessed and grateful that I'm alive today, and I try to take advantage of this time that I have, and I continue to hope that, in some small way, I am making a difference.